Hey, everybody, it's once again time for your favorite list making podcast about movies. I am one of your hosts, Josh, joined as always by the ever present Jen.
I am present, actually.
Hmm.
And my apologies to everyone for today. Um, just as sort of a quick side note, my poor sinuses and allergies are just going nuts. So I promise I'll try to mute in case I need to sneeze or something, but no guarantees. So might be a slightly rocky road today. But I'm a trooper. I'm here. So let's do this
Yeah,
thing.
I made Jen come to work anyway because that's just the kind of guy I am.
I got myself some ginger tea. I got myself a cup of coffee. I mean, I think I got both, you know, things sort of covered here. Yes, I feel like I'm gonna be okay. Just my apologies if I sound off. I promise. Um, you know, not trying to warp your ears or anything. So just bear with me.
Well, if you see the screen, the chat is already lively.
Yes, ahead of time. Mea culpa. Mea culpa. You
Well,
know,
yeah,
I'm,
yeah,
I'm excited.
me too.
I wasn't going to like launch with this, but I'm excited about what's going on
Hmm.
with our list this week, and I'll tell you why. Right, first of all, because I had a really hard time with this, and I mentioned this before the show. This was a tough one for me. I really was struggling super hard, and I actually like the challenge when it comes to trying to select movies
Oh,
that
thank
work
goodness.
for our list. But then you
Hmm?
came up with the slight answer, well, not slight answer, with the interesting comment that you had to really whittle down the movies to make the list. And so I'm really
Hmm.
interested to hear what it is that you have to say, because since I had such a hard time with it and you had such an easy time, I'm wondering if our movies will overlap at all this week. I don't know. I think it's going to be interesting.
Well, they better overlap in some places. Otherwise, it's like, I don't know what to think.
Hmm, I don't know. I don't know. I guess we're just going to have to find out. Let's see what happens. Also, some of my movies might be a little bit different than the normal movies I choose, so yeah. I can't give, 9 stars out of 10 on any of these things, but some of them are not bad. So we'll discuss. We'll discuss.
I'm going to make sure I have the 10 to 1 letterbox account, give us money, and ready to go so I can add them to our watched list as things come up. You know what? Hold on. If I just click here, hear that click? I click. Um, Go ahead and start a new list, and this one will be Jen's movies about movies. All right, ready to go.
Also, I'll be honest, movies are not like a pot of boiling water. Um, the more you watch them, the better they get, the faster they go. So some of the movies that were on my list I hadn't seen in a long time. And other than a couple which I was like struggling to get through, most of them I'm really surprised at how fast they went. They were like, you know how it is um when you do something and you like it and then you come back to it and it seems to happen even faster the second time because it's like, oh yeah, this is really good.
Oh
That's how
yes.
I felt about some of these movies. I mean, I could be talking about just about anything, but no, movies is what I'm talking about. Just realized that that sounded uh
Completely
oddly.
brilliant as always.
Yeah. Yeah, that was really scattered. I'm so sorry. But yeah, movies like a pot of boiling water. Going with the metaphor there. So who's going to start this week? Oh, actually, I guess you should introduce the topic. But then who's going to start?
Well, tonight's topic. Well, I'll get to that. So I'm going to leave the comment on the screen, and we'll get to that in a second. Tonight's topic is about films about making films, and it's where they're in the narrative, the characters are making a movie. Boom.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it sounds so simple. Yeah, it sounds so simple.
John in chat says Jen reminds me of an old time radio personality. So to which I respond with, so who's on first?
I don't know who's on first.
No, I don't know who's on third.
Well, what's on second? No.
Yes.
Yes. No. Yes. You know what? Okay, but by way of hilarious serendipity, I just watched a TikTok of somebody doing this exact same skit, but with drummers from rock bands, and it was hilarious. It worked so well. So I am definitely going to throw that link over, because if you like that skit, you'll love this. It was really good.
I loved the one the Animaniacs did with a Slappy Squirrel.
Oh my god, that Woodstock. Was actually hilarious. Yes, that was good. Everything that the Animaniacs do are good. So there's that. I think I learned the geography of the world via Animaniacs. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Third season coming this year on Hulu.
It's such a stupid idea for such an awesome show. I really love it.
Mm-hmm. Rob Paulson, you're amazing. Anyway.
So who goes first?
You know what? Maybe I should go first.
All right. Get us going.
I hate to be, the guy that's like, it's a man's world, so I'm going to go first. No, that's not the case. That's not the case. I'm not being misogynistic. I'm just, just going to get the general idea of what I'm about to set everybody up with my list. So
just in case I actually need to redo my entire list as you talk. That's probably a good idea, because I may need some scramble time. So have at it.
Well, I'm not sure how much talking I can do about my number 10. After all, it is my number 10. But my what would you say if I told you my number 10 was made by an Academy Award-winning writer?
I would say that that's off to a good start.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. He wrote it, and he directed it, and he said, you know what this movie needs? It needs Jack Black and Mos Def to star. So that's what they did. And they made a little film called Be Kind, Rewind.
Yeah, I guess that is a movie about making movies, isn't it? Well, is it really? Yeah, I guess it is. Yeah, okay. All right.
For those unfamiliar with the story, it has that classic 80s, oh no, the insert place we like to hang out here is being closed down, demolished, turned into condos, whatever the case may be. It's such a classic premise, right? We have to save the video store / rec center / youth center. It all fits. And this is no exception. Their video store is in danger of being bulldozed. And these guys, they work there. They're like, movies, they're great. And they want to tear down the VHS store. Why? Well, money is always the short answer. But during an attempted sabotage, because I speak French, one of them winds up accidentally getting magnetized. And when he walks into the store, he erases all of the VHS tapes completely by accident.
Oh my God. I swear to God, that was like a nightmare.
I know, right?
It's a nightmare.
It's
a real thing.
A horror theme, right?
Whew.
Whether they know it or not. And someone comes in wanting a movie and they're like scrambling to figure out it's not in yet, or we don't have it right now, and come back in a little while. So to get that customer a copy of the movie, they grab a video camera and they just shoot their own version of it and rent it out. And yeah, it's as hilarious as it sounds. Jack Black reenacting, these movies. It's just a lot of fun. And as the movies wind up being more popular than the actual movies they're trying to rent out, the demand becomes more and more. And then, one of the reasons they're like, these are Swedish films. So that's why we're going to need a little more time to import them because they're Sweded. And yeah, that's the movie in a nutshell. They're trying to save the video store. All the videos get erased, and now they have to remake all the movies with a video camera and some friends. If that's not a good time, I don't know what is. It's not your classic Hollywood, we're making a film story, but the idea that, it's about these guys that just get together and make movies, no matter how awful they actually are. They're doing something that they're loving to do to save something that they love. Everybody's heart's in the right place. I love this movie. That's why it's my number 10.
And it just goes to show you that the viewing public will really watch anything. I think that that's a fair assessment. If you produce it, someone will watch it.
Yeah.
I watch enough horror to know that there is a movie out there for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yeah.
So. And if you were wondering what Michael Gondry won his Oscar for, it was co-writing Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind with Charlie Kaufman. So we get to sneak that movie in sort of under the radar right there. I always love talking about that. Well, I mean, we're not going to talk about it, but you got to mention. So,
shout out where shout outs are due. Right.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, my number 10 movie is I got to start off with at least some horror, right? I don't have too much on my list that kind of fits this bill. So I chose Wes Craven's New Nightmare. And this is one of the weirdest of the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise movies that there is, but it's also, I don't know, it has a place in my heart that is so far hasn't been usurped by any other movie because it's so meta. It's so like, well, if serial killers are real, but we are also making the movie of that serial killer who is also supernatural. But there's also an actor, but there's also, it's crazy. It's one of those like box within a box within a box sort of storytelling piece, and Wes Craven is actually really good at that stuff. Everybody gives a pretty well-rounded performance. I can't say that the movie is like award-winning or even Oscar worthy, but it's definitely Nightmare on Elm Street worthy. It's got a great idea for mixing up the lore in Nightmare on Elm Street. So I liked this movie. I did not really feel like it was the best of the best kind of movies. And where the movie part comes in is, there are all during the movie they're shooting the new Nightmare on Elm Street with Freddy Krueger in it. And then, sorry for laughing because I shouldn't be laughing at the carnage, but hilarity ensues when Freddy Krueger is actually maybe real, even though clearly we see actors. Some crazy stuff. It's good. It's good. It's one of those inside of a box, outside of a box, matrixy kind of ideas. But I really liked it. And the one thing that I find the most unreasonable about this movie is the way that they shoot their scenes, which just feel so ridiculous, like, no, that's not actually how they shoot a scene, guys. Um, even though that criticism is leveled at people who are shooting the scene for the movie. So even my criticism of the movie is metacontextual. So yeah, so please feel free to chew on that for as long as you need to, or at least until I get to my number 9. So, Josh, what's your number 9?
I'm sorry, I'm still trying to chew on that.
It's gonna be a little gristly. I'm so sorry.
The meta is just like blowing my mind, man.
There's just so much about the way that they set up their shots to be shot, which are clearly defined as this is what we think you think we're doing in Hollywood, but that's not really what we're doing in Hollywood. And it makes me laugh every time because it's so like, well, give the people what they want, right? This is the movie that we think you think we're shooting, but not really the movie that we're shooting. It's just fun. It's just very fun. Yes, it feels very Matrixy, like, Neo is going to show up any moment. And say, Mr. Anderson. I feel like that could definitely be a part of it. We could fix that. We could get that in there.
Okay. I think I'm recovered a little bit now.
So glad I could be of assistance there, Josh. Really glad.
My number 9 is a 2016 film by the Coen Brothers. Have you heard of the Coen Brothers?
I have heard of the Coen Brothers.
I hear
vaguely.
they've made a few films.
I think, yeah, they may have made a couple.
It's so nice that they're brothers and they get to work together. Isn't that nice?
No, because honestly, if I had to work with my brothers, I think I'd kill them.
That's a fair point.
Yeah.
You know my sister, and
I do actually. Hi, Betty.
I couldn't imagine having a.
No, it's not it with the Coen brothers. I feel like they must have developed a system where they delegate their authority very cleanly, because it's clear that they have they have a system in place. With my brothers, I feel like it would just be a free for all, and everybody would be telling everybody, "You're doing it wrong. You're doing it wrong."
I just had this thought in my head that they're like, I want this to be a wide shot. And they're like, no, I want it to be a 2-shot.
Mm-hmm.
No, I want it to be a wide shot. No, it's a 2-shot. And they're both like, Mom.
And see, this is where the back of the house turns into the comedy that would be absolutely hilarious to film, because probably the source material for what's behind the scenes would be even funnier or more intense than whatever is going on in front of the cameras. Yeah, this could work. Again, pointing to my number 10, yeah, that was actually a good model. We should totally pick up on that.
Write a movie starring the Coen Brothers.
We got something going.
You've seen their work. Now watch them work. Anyway,
moving right along.
The movie that made my number 9 is Hail Caesar.
Hey, we do have a crossover there.
Oh wow! How about that? See, I knew there would be. Anyway, since there's crossover, I'll keep mine short. I'll keep it to why I liked it. I love movies about old time Hollywood. This is set in 1951 specifically. It makes me miss the idea of prestige pictures, right? Huge set pieces, massive. As they would say, it's a cast of thousands. That kind of thing. And
yep.
I used to love when not that I was there for it. God, no, not that I was there for it, but seeing the adverts and the trailers from back in the day where that was like a bragging point where they're like, we hired a bunch of people for next to nothing. And it just reminds me of a better time in cinema what can I say? But one of essentially what happens when your star goes missing. It kind of lets you know, oh, when it says Hollywood's a machine, that means the pieces can be replaced, and yeah, it kind of shows off that sort of reputation as well. And there's quite a bit going on in this film. Of I'm going to let Jen take over most of the heavy lifting when it comes to breaking it down, but I really enjoyed this film enough to make it my number 9. So, boom, hail Caesar.
Nice. Hail Caesar is a little bit further up on my list, so I do have plenty to say about it. So, but good choice.
Thank you.
My number 9 is probably a movie that most people haven't heard of, or maybe if you've heard of it, I don't know if you've seen it, but it is really worth seeing. It's called Son of Rambow. Rambow. And just by way of quick explanation, if you haven't seen this movie, Josh, have you seen this movie?
I have actually.
Really? Did you like it?
I
Did you
did.
think that it was good? Okay. So the movie itself is these kids, and I have to say that this is one of my favorite sort of like sub niches in filmmaking, is when you come across a movie where the kids are exploring either theater or filmmaking, or some kind of dramatic arts, because honestly, a kid's world is really pretend. Everything that they do is centered around the pretend world, and it lends itself so well to acting by profession and sort of doing world building without very much heavy lifting at all. The kids just do it so naturally, and the effects can be so amazing. And Son of Rambo is like that. It is. I'm trying to think if, like, I want to say that it's quirky. I don't think I want to say it's quirky as much as I want to say it is very endearing. There's so much in here that will make you laugh. It'll make you smile. It'll make you, feel all of the feels, and it doesn't feel like it's super big budget, right? It feels like it's like it's tight in terms of the both the quality of everything and the scope of it all. Um it there are parts of this movie that are so funny, and I don't even know if it was like intentional that it happened the way that it did, but oh my god, thank god they had cameras rolling, because some of it is just hilarious. And the other part of this movie that makes me really happy is the expression of film as a way to kind of break out of class roles, the religious roles. It basically is like a freeing elixir that gives these kids this breath that they sort of need in order to move into the next phase of their life. And it's really amazing, that first of all, that the concept of this kind of came up and that they were able to do it, but secondly, that it that they tried to make an amateur film from First Blood, which is like the first, Rambo movie. It's I mean, it's a Rambo movie, I should say. um is so funny, because you get a bunch of kids that are running around trying to be Rambo, and it's like, you know what? That's just so classic. This is exactly what kids do in real life after they've watched a movie that is like, oh, everybody, we got to watch this. We got to watch this. So that's my number 9 pick. I think that that particular movie is a perfect making movies in a movie, and it doesn't take a lot to enjoy it. It's not, again, it's not Academy Award. It was Sundance Award worthy, but it's not crazy like, oh my gosh, this is going to make you. It's not Shiloh. It's not going to make you cry. All those things. But it is really good, and I really liked it. So gets my number 9, Son of Rambo. And that movie was released in 2017. I'm sorry, 2007, not 2017. Um, and for some reason, 2007 feels like a really long time ago. I don't know about you, but that feels really far.
And yet 1999 doesn't feel all that far at all.
No, it's really weird how the 2000s feel like they are actually further back in time than the 1990s. I don't know what's up with that, but timey-wimey. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. I definitely did a stint in the TARDIS, that's for sure. So could just be messed up there. I don't know. I'll ask the next whale that I see.
Do that.
Yeah.
Yes, bizarre.
Well, of course it's bizarre. The TARDIS, okay, so I mixed the whale with Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy with Doctor Who, but I mean, if you know, you know.
And I know.
See? And I knew that you knew, and that's what, wow, you know what? That number 10 movie just keeps coming back to haunt me here. Yeah. Wow, maybe I shouldn't have made that my number 10. It's the foundation of everything.
Exactly, John. Doctor Who.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
Okay, never mind.
So my number, God, what number are you on?
You are on number 8.
My number 8 is it's widely acclaimed. It's about a movie that's not. I mean, but it is. But it's not. But it is. I'm thinking I'm destroying my own head with the meta. Okay. My number 8 is called Dolomite Is My Name.
Oh, I know this movie.
It's about Rudy Ray Moore and how the iconic Dolomite came to be. Up to and including, the first film and the troubles that were had. 1, getting it made, 2, getting it seen, and 3, it turning into some sort of cultural phenomenon. It stars Eddie Murphy, and other than enjoying this movie, I don't know how well I can kind of extrapolate the meaning of the movie making process in this movie, because it was even in the film itself. Wow, I realized, looking at my list, this is just another another movie that I have about people making movies that probably shouldn't be making movies. Does that make sense?
Yeah, makes total sense. I actually feel that way about 90% of Hollywood today anyway, so I think that that's actually a good fit.
What really drives
That
me to
was
like this
disingenuous.
movie?
Wait. I got to walk that back. That was
Okay.
silly. No,
Yeah.
I don't mean 90%. It's a lesser number, but yeah. I don't want to be mean to people, so.
Okay. Well, it's not like you pointed out any Zack Snyder's or anything.
No, but thank you.
Yeah, that's what I'm here for.
Yeah.
Helping us, smooth over the playing field, and make sure everybody gets the. So Dolomite Is My Name. Goes along with the theme of, hey, if you have an idea to make a movie, why don't you grab a few friends and make a movie? Because you never know what could happen with it. That's been sort of the philosophy behind everything at Wadco. Just in general, the Wadcast has that final message every week. Stop talking about doing it, just do it. And Rudy Ray Moore created this character, Dolomite, and wanted to make a movie. So he got people to believe in him. He picked up a crew at UCLA and put out a movie. The next step is, of course, getting people to want to see the movie, which is a bit of a feat unto itself when nobody wants to distribute it. But if you can get a theater, if you can get that crowd in the 70s, then there's a chance somebody could hear something and change their mind about wanting to distribute it, and that's exactly what happened here. They saw the reaction that the crowd had to the movie, and how people kept wanting to see the movie. Not because it was brilliant by any means, but because Dolomite was Dolomite. I mean, it's kung fu themed, cheesy. We've all seen the many copies since it's just part of the American cultural zeitgeist, overall. But this is kind of where the kind of the rubber meets the road, so to speak, and things really took off and created sort of like an entire new genre of film, especially for a very underseen community. Dolomite is my name. It's my number 8, and it's for all those reasons that I said.
I think that's a pretty good choice, actually. And it kind of fits with my number 8, which is not conventional in the sense that it shows all of the behind the scenes movie making process, where most of my other movies actually, or most of the other films that I chose, do sort of handle the actual hands on, hey, we're making a movie. This one is more it's the process, but it's the writing process, and it's also by the Coen brothers. It's called Barton Fink. It was released in 1991, and he is the writer, or he is trying to be a writer. It's 1941. This is, I guess you would call it, a black comedy. It is really messy and all over the place, and that is honestly part of its glory, I think. This is the one movie on the list that I really like a lot. It's crazy, and it's sort of all over the place intentionally, but it feels so psychologically damaging for our protagonist to go through all of these things. And in a way, it's like this is this cathartic process that he's going through. um he struggles, which is like almost a trope at, well, it is a trope, where a writer sits down and kind of can't get past either the first sentence or the first words, or has a blank page in front of them and just can't simply get the story on paper, despite the fact that they think that they have a novel in them, or a screenplay, or something. And in this case, it's the screenplay. And all kinds of crazy things sort of happen. There are serial killers involved. There are beheadings. There are just unbelievable stuff. And by the time that the movie comes to a close, uh, I don't really feel like we have very much closure to the story, but we have an ending. And I really liked it for that reason. I love the idea that that basically all writers have to suffer in order to get the creative process out. Like, this is so important that you suffer for your art. And especially when it comes to screenwriting, I don't really understand why many, not all, but many writers experience this kind of like existential dread about having to come up with material that they either haven't experienced, or feel like they need to suffer to get the experience for, or whatever. Yeah, I've never felt that way, but it's such an interesting idea, and to see it fully fleshed out the way that it is in Barton Fink, it it's just a really cool film. Also, I mean, it's Coen brothers, so either you really like it or you really don't. There kind of is no in between. So that's my number 8, and that's a 1991 film.
You know, as far as writing goes, I've never really had much of an issue getting words to paper, but that's not me bragging, saying, "Oh, well, I've never had writer's block." That's not really the point. I just never understood the idea that, well, like you said, they seem to be living the trope.
Right.
And I think that's exactly what it is. I think the idea
It is,
of what
John.
screenwriters are supposed to be is influencing how screenwriters feel like they're supposed to be.
Yes, yes. And almost, I think sometimes, not always, because I know that there are writers out there that don't fall into this weird kind of stereotype, but there are a lot of writers that I've come into contact with that are just incredibly like, you don't have to have an existential crisis every time that you produce a piece of art. I recognize that, somehow we glamorize or try to come up with some kind of, beautiful story behind the story, as if, like, having the suffering makes the story better. And then I think, no, no, that's not right. That's not the way that it really is. If your story can hold water, it can hold water. And the shape and the size of the bucket is just determinate by the writer. You don't have to go out of your way to, somehow claw into subject matter in order to make it relevant to the audience. If you're a good enough writer, you can do that without making it the suffering yourself. But it's so funny the way that, I mean, it really is a thing that writers really feel like they have to suffer for their art. And I mean, look, if you want to be Van Gogh and cut off your ear, fine. But yeah, I'll just say no.
I can honestly say the blood doesn't appear on page. So
I, well, whatever. Okay. I guess I will hop off of my soapbox, but George Lucas and Steven Spielberg, whether you like all of their stuff or not, have been fairly brilliant in their presentation of screenplays that they've brought forward. And neither of them has done that kind of weird association with, having an existential crisis while I'm writing this, and, feeling like, oh my God, and all the pressure in the world was on me. And there has to be a behind the scenes about why it was this way. George Lucas comes on and goes, well, I really love Joseph Campbell. And I'm like, yeah, yeah, yeah. See, that's it. Just write a good story.
did you watch The Offer?
I don't think I did watch The Offer. No.
That's it was a limited series, I guess that's what they're called now, about the making of The Godfather.
Oh, yes, I did. I'm sorry, I didn't recognize the title. Yes, I did. Yes.
So wasn't it great when, like, some of the most fun aspects of it were watching Mario Puzo and Francis Ford Coppola just hanging out in that house writing the thing,
Yes.
and they're not freaking out or anything. They're drinking and smoking and just, it's like they're old
Yes.
frat brothers. Just
Yeah, and it made amazing cinema. So okay, so I mean, I guess I should qualify this with, I'm certainly not the person, or ever would be a person, to minimize an experience that someone has that leads them to creating fantastic art, or the screenplay that really just hits everybody in a way that is so solid and personal, and really makes an impact because your personal experience with the subject matter is that tight and that important and that close. I'm going coming at this from the opposite direction, which is, if you're a writer and you want to write something that is impactful and has, just mountains of feeling and emotion, it's not like you don't have to go kill your wife in order to understand what it would feel like for someone to kill their wives. or wife, I'm sorry. But that's what I get out of a lot of these like super emotional, uh especially the dramas where writers like go through these weird experiences so that they can get into the mindset of whatever the subject matter is. And it just feels like, well, are you not good enough of a writer? Have you not sort of had enough experiences just to know that human emotions work this way and characters work this way, and you are god in your screenplay? Do with it what you will. I don't know. There's something oddly disconnected there. It's not that it can't work the other way. It's just that when it works from, hey, I'm a writer who wants to write something that has meaning and is powerful and is, prestigious. I have to suffer for it. No, it's just fun. I mean, funny. Maybe it's not fun, but it is if you're watching it.
Kind of like, not John, like took the words right out of my mouth. I was going to say it's method writing.
Method writing. God. Right, exactly.
And I don't remember who it was that had that quote about method actors. And he was like, yeah, don't do that because, I'm an actor and I act.
Right. Yes. That it just goes back to, not to be and I say this a lot and I apologize for saying it a lot, but not to be an elitist snob or anything, but if your profession is writing and you're writing, then you're doing it right. If you can connect the dots and make something happen, make screenplay magic happen, then that's writing excellence. That's what you're striving for. That doesn't mean everything you write is going to be excellent, but adding in this like dimensional layer of, well, I need to go and hang out in the Andes mountains for, 6 months because I don't really know what it's like to live in solitude is just patently ridiculous. It's just, I don't know. It's just like it's adding flavor for the sake of adding flavor when it really doesn't help the dish at all. You know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Sorry, I did not mean for this to be a treatise on screenplay writing, but Barton Fink definitely moves in the direction of, hey, what's going on here? Come on, guys. And it's a good film. It's a great film.
I guess we'll talk about my number 7.
Let's go.
My number 7 is from director Barry Sonnenfeld. It's a 1995 film. It's called Get Shorty.
Oh, good film.
What happens
Get Shorty
when a Miami mobster wants to, get into the movie business? Well, that's what Get Shorty's about. He has an idea for a movie and he wants to get it made. And people owe people money, and he's just left the whole time wondering, God, which business is dirtier? Being a mobster or being a filmmaker? Either way, he's kind of he's prepared for what Hollywood has to offer because of the business he's in, as far as the shady dealings and the double talk and double crossing and all of these wonderful things. And of course, between the two, being a mobster, or at least someone that's sent out to collect debt, it all comes down to being able to get money. Those are where the similarities really cross over, because his boss wants money that's owed to him, but he also needs to get money for a movie that he wants to produce. And worlds are colliding. It's like crazy. It's an episode of Seinfeld, And at the end of the day, the lesson he takes away is, Hollywood's a pretty messed up place to work, And Get Shorty is admittedly not your traditional look at how films get made, because we don't normally go through the eyes of someone that wants to be a producer. The big stories are usually centered around, I'm going to be a director, or I want to be an actor, or
Hmm.
something along those lines. So to to see this character who wants to see his story told on screen, uh, come at it from the angle of, well, I'm going to be a producer because that's where the money is, right? And he's one of those guys, Chili Palmer is the kind of guy that's like, I have a mind to do something, so I'm going to do it. And it's filled out with a wonderful cast. Gene Hackman, absolutely great. Rene Russo, Danny DeVito. You know all of these people. They're wonderful. And to see them fill out this world of Chili Palmer, as he's trying to do the mobster thing to get the Hollywood thing going, sort of a transitioning period between careers. We've all been there. It is just a hilarious look at somebody that, you know what? The long and short of it is he just wants to change jobs. It's not even a different job description. He just wants to change jobs. And I love that idea. Mobster wants to make movies, finds out it's pretty much the same. Get Shorty. That's my number 7.
um, I mean, listen, if you have a choice between making movies and being a used car salesman, although the perks are probably fairly even and the sliminess of it is probably pretty on par, you should probably choose making movies because definitely, according to Get Shorty, it is a heck of a ride. So
A lot of fun.
I love all the actors in Get Shorty. They're so good and they're so convincing.
And
They
the
really
fact that they
are.
just were able to pull them all together for this, I
You're
love it.
right.
I love a good
I really,
ensemble piece. I'm a sucker for one every time.
and they all complement each other. Like they all have such different strengths in this movie, and that does make it good. I have to say, whenever I think of Get Shorty and I think of, oh my god, it must be so hard to be a producer, my mind now always goes to Jean Favreau because he produces so much and he's actually a really brilliant person. I mean, I haven't met him personally, but according to what I can see, he definitely seems to have a good, what's a good word for this? He has an excellent portfolio of shows, of movies, of being creative consultants on things, and it never seems to go wrong. But I will bet that the behind the scenes look at how he pulls all that stuff together, maybe it doesn't look quite as bad as Get Shorty, but I'll bet he recognizes some of that. I always think about him for producer stuff. Okay. My number 7, continuing with the meta theme, and also with John's comment about being um, in the immersive actor role. Let's just say, um, so we don't have to make anybody be upset about being a character actor or being hey, I'm in role. No, well, this movie kind of deals with that anyway. It's called Shadow of the Vampire. This is one of the few movies that I have ever seen where Willem Dafoe and John Malkovich are together in a way where there is, oh god, there is so much male energy in this movie that it's kind of hard to watch sometimes. So the long and short of the plot is they're filming sort of an unauthorized version of Bram Stoker's Dracula, and they call it Nosferatu. And the character that is going to play Nosferatu, who is the actor, and I forgot what the actor's name is, Gustav, I think, or no, the actor's name is Max, Max Schreck, and he won't appear to the cast or the crew ever without being in makeup and in character. And really weird stuff starts to happen. And I do mean weird stuff. Like, there's a bottle of blood that ends up sort of just appearing. Um, somebody gets is it a ferret? I think it's a ferret. Somebody gets delivered a ferret. Like, there's all these kind of weird little pieces that happen. And you know, as they're filming, other weird stuff starts to happen. Things that might not necessarily be intentional. Um, and I won't give a whole lot away because if you haven't seen it, if I tell you the whole shtick, it kind of loses its effectiveness. But it's cool, and it's one of those Wes Craven nightmare kind of feels where it's like super meta, but there's all these other added layers. And John Malkovich, I mean, listen, I love him in just about everything that he does. Truly, I really do. And this movie is no exception. The movie itself is not the greatest in the world, but William Dafoe and John Malkovich together in this make it totally worth watching. And if you have ever wanted to see what was sort of happening with a 1921 filming of a movie, this definitely gets it pretty good. Like how they do the lighting, and the fact that they really don't have VFX, so what they're going to do in order to make stuff happen to make it look spooky, that kind of stuff is actually really cool. And then you get sort of the meta stuff, which is, oh hey, maybe there really is a vampire running around here, what's going on? Or is it really just our actor trying to be the best method actor that he could ever be? I mean, how immersed in the role can you get? Yeah, it's actually really good. So that is my number 7, Shadow of the Vampire. This was released in 2000. And I have to say that in the 2000s, like right around 2000, and then on, a couple of years on either side, there was a huge trove of vampire movies that came out. And so if you haven't seen this, I don't blame you. There were so many vampire movies that came out. This one could definitely get lost in the tangle. But it's really worth watching. And it's fun. So yeah, it's a movie. It's like a period piece movie about shooting a movie in 1921 where is there a vampire or is there not a vampire? Very fun. Love it.
For some reason, that seems very you.
Does it? Yeah, yeah. I mean, I honestly, I was gonna say, I was gonna say, I have an obsession with horror movies, but I'm starting to think that I actually have an affliction that just leads me to love horror movies. I'm not sure which one really fits better, whether it's like some kind of psychological malfunction or whether it's just an honest obsession. I don't know, but either way, they end up on my list quite a bit. So,
I'm going to see if I can find a way for you to make a list with no horror movies.
oh, come on. That would not be fun. Well, you know what? When I give you our homework for next week, I think you'll probably be uh, fairly surprised at the less number of horror movies that are on the list. So, we'll see. We'll talk about that later. But upwards and onwards to number 6.
It's going to be a continuing subplot. Not to be mean, but as a challenge to myself.
Yes. So yeah, no, I'm not going to help you with that. I was going to suggest something, and then I thought, no, why am I helping you with that? No. I mean, there are legitimately masochistic tendencies that I definitely have. I mean, I'm totally open about that, but I have to stop making it so easy for other people to exploit that. And so, yeah, why am I helping you torture me? That feels like a bridge too far.
Mm-hmm. So I'm going to figure out how to do it all on my own.
Can't wait. I'm just so excited. Chomping at the bit here, Josh.
Well, then hopefully you'll be just as excited to hear my number 6.
I definitely already am. Lay it on us.
Now, I had a lot of options here for what would go into this slot. But I'm going to go with my number 6. And this is a movie that I think because I very specifically wanted a slot dedicated to writing, screenwriting, and that was my number 6 slot. Not and no, I'm not saying that I was set out to go. My number 6 is going to be dedicated to writing. I know that's what it sounds like. No, I just said, okay, I just want one movie about a screenwriter because that's I feel like should be represented on my list somewhere. So I picked the movie and then placed it, just so we're absolutely clear. Clear here. There. Words. Okay. So my number 6 is
Sometimes they
from.
matter. Sometimes. Doing good. You're doing good.
Okay, thank you. Whew. Getting a little tongue tied. My number 6 is from the year 2020.
Wow, recent one.
Yeah, it's actually pretty recent because it's called Mank.
Oh, that's an interesting choice. Okay.
I think so. For those of you unaware, it's directed by David Fincher and stars a little guy named Gary Oldman. Maybe you've heard of him. He's
done a couple movies.
He's quite the acting guy, from what I've seen, and it's about Herman Mankiewicz. I hope I'm saying that name correctly. And he was called Mank for short, and it's going through his personal journey of writing Citizen Kane. Maybe you've heard of that movie too. I imagine.
I have. I definitely have. I mean, isn't that the movie about the citizen that's named Kane?
Yes, it's a wrestling film.
Yeah. It's so funny the number of people that can quote the end line without really having any context at all for it, but they immediately know that it comes from that movie. So that's kind of cool.
Sometimes it's the only thing they know.
Sometimes it is the only thing they know. That is true. Yes.
Nothing wrong with that though. But it does go to show that this movie that was made, a long time ago, if the math is correct, how much it still has an impact on sort of pop culture of today, where it's still being kind of battered around as a reference.
Yep.
And that's because of this guy right here, Mank. And as I said before, I love stories of old time Hollywood, especially when it comes to writers, because back then, they were somewhat literally a dime a dozen, and not for the writing talent, but for the number of stuff they had to put out. It was literally a job where they're like, okay, let me know about the cigarette, please. Scotch bourbon. It was that place where you went to the office and you just typed away, and then you went home and you typed away, and then you made pictures. I love those stories, and to see a story that's kind of pulling back the curtain on what some consider to be the greatest, film of all time. And I'm not in that camp. I recognize it for the greatness that it is, but I mean, come on. Not knocking Citizen Kane. I'm just saying, come on. And all of the, and this is a term that gets batted around very loosely these days, but all of the politics involved behind the scenes when it comes to these movies, whether it's, have you ever been a part of the Communist Party, that kind of thing, or hey, let's piss off William Randolph Hearst, the newspaper guy, right? So it's a lot of not only in industry politics, but it's a lot of actual politics, going into decisions about the pictures that are being made, and how people are sort of represented to the public, because they felt, and in a way still do, very they feel very heavily that uh, these kinds of things will sway the masses, and turn them into this, or make them vote for that. It's not something I wish. Well, I would say it's something I wish I didn't have to say is still around. But yeah, we still have people that are very antsy about just movies, and the messages in them. So to see Meg Story, played by such a superb actor, Gary Oldman, and uh, watch the hardships as he's just trying to write, and eventually did write, what he considers his masterpiece, of to which he later won the co he won shared an Oscar with Orson Welles for best screenplay. It it's good to see, and it's kind of an eye opener to anybody that wants to know what things were like, and kind of gets a heads up to the kind of, not necessarily the atmosphere, but the the continued issues that some might face trying to pull off something of this magnitude. So that's why it's my number six.
Good choice. Very good choice. Um, okay. My number 6 is a movie that we already talked about. It's called Hail Caesar. Now, I am just going to read a pre-written description of this movie because I feel like it does so much justice to the chaotic nature of Hail Caesar. Hail Caesar is a 2016 film from the Coen brothers and Universal Pictures. It's the 50s. Eddie Mannix is a fixer. I feel like that's important. He's a fixer for the Hollywood studios Capitol Pictures, who's getting tired of juggling the eclectic personalities that his business attracts. He's considering taking an offer to work for an aviation company, but before he can accept or deny the offer, Mannix still has to do his job for at least one more day. So within 24 hours, well, actually a little bit more, 27 hours, Mannix must deal with an out of his depth singing cowboy's conflict with his Shakespearean director, an A-list actress's out of wedlock pregnancy, and a communist plot to kidnap the star of Hail Caesar, a tale of the Christ, all while fending off gossip columnists and attempting to quit smoking. So there's a lot in there, and the movie does not disappoint on any score. Every single one of those points is um, overly dramatized and sort of runs with it in a way that there's like threads of each sort of plot point running through the entire film. Um, I think, as you said, this is one of those films that's like it has this old timey Hollywood feel to it because bigger and better and whatever. But it's really, I think, an ode to, or a parody of, the kind of capitalism that Hollywood used to espouse. Capitalism now in terms of Hollywood is a supernova compared to what it was then. But it's interesting that even then, the blockbuster was something so important. It was so special. To do something big and epic was, to coin John Hammond, spare no expense. And you get the feel over this movie that, everything that they're doing is basically spare no expense. But it's spare no expense to the fixer, right? Like, he's the one that has to make everything work, And oftentimes that leads to really crazy situations going on. Um, what one of a lot of the things that I love from this movie are just straight up tropes. And the trope of the fixer is hilarious because I don't know how much or how many of them really existed in old Hollywood the way that they're describing our main protagonist here, but I will say that this is one of those sort of like your role might be executive producer, or your role might be an executive assistant under somebody, and really your role is just to go put out fires everywhere. And so I feel like it's kind of an ode to the unsung work that people do behind the scenes, and they never get credit for it. And I mean, probably they don't want to get credit for it because that would sort of mean that there was a problem to begin with that they had to fix. But it's really interesting to kind of get a meta behind the scenes idea of what was happening or what could have been happening. I did really like this movie a lot. And one of the other things that I really love about this movie is, despite the fact that it is completely anachronistic in almost more ways than I could possibly even say, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because none of the things that are really happening here have any impact on the movie itself. So it doesn't matter that, they're using language that it was definitely not language that they would have used then, that they are saying things or doing things that they wouldn't have done then. There's even kind of some shout outs to groups that didn't exist, that they had already disbanded by the time that the movie is said to have begun. And then there's anachronisms in the movie itself, stuff that, if you know Roman history, if you know history at all, you would know that the conversion of Saul doesn't happen before the birth of Christ. Things like that, which are sort of kind of crazy, but really cool stuff. Very cool. I really like this movie, um, for mostly for all of the tropes, but also just for being a genuine kind of love letter to the fact that nothing ever goes as planned when you are making a movie. So, good job, Josh, because that movie was definitely a good pick. And it was my number 6.
Well, if it made your list, I know it's a good pick. Makes me feel good. So I guess we're breaking into the top 5.
Top 5.
All right. This is okay, I get the giggles thinking about this one because it's a movie about making a movie. Like, that is what it is. And the only thing is, it's a movie about making a really, really terrible movie.
Uh-oh.
That's right. I'm talking about none other than 2017's The Disaster Artist.
Oh no. Oh god,
Yes.
I think I actually erased that movie out of my head.
Which one? The Room or The Disaster Artist?
Both. I feel like I should plead the fifth on that because they're yeah. Okay, moving right along. Yes?
Well, I should probably say words about this movie.
Yes, that would be super helpful.
So, what is The Disaster Artist? Well, a long time ago, there was this movie called The Room, and it was made by a it was made by a guy named Tommy Wiseau. Where is he from? Oh, nobody knows apparently, but it is when you see words used like, wow, this could be the worst movie ever. In every conversation, you're going to hear somebody bring up The Room, but in an almost loving way, like, oh, yes, that is terrible, and I love it. It's just that kind of film. It's so quotable, not for the great dialogue. No, quite the opposite. Is it a movie for its wonderful plot? Nope, that's pretty nonsensical too. No, it's memorable for all the wrong reasons, and in fact, it was reacted to so. I don't even know. I have no idea. Uh, but that was so much the reaction that after after it was made, after people saw it, and people were laughing and laughing and laughing. The creator, the writer, director, and star, I might add, said, "Oh, it was a comedy the whole time. You're supposed to laugh," which I think is um, a great idea, I guess. But we could talk about The Room all day, all night. We just keep talking about that movie. Oh, hi, Mark. But that's no. This movie is about the making of that movie, and the question is, how do you not capture lightning in a bottle, but how do you portray such a, a disaster in a good way on a bad movie? It's a really tight rope to walk, and it stars James Franco, Dave Franco, Seth Rogen. Um, the stories that would come out about the making of The Room and how they're portrayed here, so incredibly, just wow, just wow. The the words are just, they don't exist to describe this. All I can say is The Disaster Artist was an epic look at the making of my favorite bad movie, and I absolutely loved it. Oh, hi, doggy. You, Times like this, I wish we actually did do some editing so I would sound a little more coherent. But you know, that's the bane of live radio. That's it's what we do anyway. The Disaster Artist is uh, a good, in my opinion, it's a good movie about a bad movie. I wish it were a great movie about a bad movie, but I'm thinking it's not really the merits of the movie that bring it down as much as the flaws of the source material that bring the good movie down to be uh, less than maybe it should have been. And here I am, espousing it as my top five, and because I think that's all part of the point, that they tried tried to make a good movie about a bad movie, which in turn made it a mediocre movie, and that's how you get math. So The
Okay.
Disaster Artist is my number five.
I well, I won't give you my opinion on that movie. It was a good choice for a movie within a movie. That was good. I definitely agree that that is definitely one of those movies that feel like behind the scenes, everything that can go wrong will go wrong. And honestly, this is the best segue that I could come up with for my number five movie, which is called Living in Oblivion. Living in Oblivion is a film that basically happens in three different acts. In Act One, we get to meet director Nick Rave. He is played by Steve Buscemi, and this is basically a movie about shooting a low budget independent movie. And let me tell you, if Murphy's Law existed for a movie to be made, the making of the movie in Living in Oblivion would definitely be the epitome of that. Everything seriously goes wrong. They are so tight budgeted that they don't replace the milk in craft services on a table. And they've been trying to get the actors to emote in a certain way. And you're wondering, what does that have to do with milk? Well, they do finally get the actors to emote in a certain way, and it turns out that the cinematographers who went to go get coffee consumed the bad milk that someone decided not to replace on the craft services table, and ended up throwing up everywhere, and didn't get the shot. So, bad choices spiral, and the director is sort of beside himself, not knowing what to do, because he can't get the actors to do what he wants, and then when he does, no one is there to actually get the shot. It's pretty hilarious. um Part two of this movie is pretty much all around, um let's just say, frustrations build. um the two of the director and the actors continue to have issues. But I feel like this is, you start getting into the more interpersonal dynamics, and it doesn't get any better than in the first act of the movie. There are parts of this where it kind of ends up feeling like, well, they sleep together, did they not sleep together? uh Kind of turns out that no. The person who thinks that all this stuff happened actually wakes up and has dreamt everything that was in there. So that was also super interesting. The dream within the story within the story that was a dream is kind of a weird, deep trope, but this movie is definitely kind of like Barton Fink, extremely black comedy. I mean, it's like there's so much, it drips with sarcasm, but it also has a sardonic nature to it. Like, it's biting in a way that is clearly meant to say, yeah, you know what? If you've experienced this, you know what we're talking about, and it's gross, right? Am I right, guys? Am I right? Um, in part three, they're setting up for a dream sequence in the movie, and more things seem to kind of go wrong. Um, I feel like by the end of this movie, you begin to realize, not just that it's amazing that movies get made at all, right? That there must just be so much junk on the cutting room floor that is just absolutely terrible. And then there's just like, 4 or 5 bright spots, and you're like, yeah, this is what we need. It has this sort of like, it's not just a dark comedy, it's also a really pessimistic look at movie making while it's making fun of movie making. So anyway, yes, it's really good. Steve Buscemi is great. The rest of the cast is hilarious as sort of, you know, proper intent, but just absolutely clueless about how to pull things together. And then all of the terrible choices that get made for each and every idea. It's kind of like dominoes falling down. It's super crazy. Peter Dinklage is in this. It's just really good all around. So number 5, Living in Oblivion, and this movie, I think it came out in 1995 or six. Um, it was written and directed by Tom DeCilio, I think. I'm not super. That might not be right, but it was I know it was written and directed by the same person. I think it was Tom DeCilio, and I know it was in the mid 1990s. It's actually really, it's quite an interesting retrospective look at movie making. And like, if you like the series that was on a while ago called Extras, this movie might be right up your alley. So that's my number 5.
Well, that one's going on the old watch list for sure.
It's super interesting. It's really interesting, for sure.
You know me, I gotta strike while the iron is hot and get these things added to my list. So, and it's available on Peacock and Tubi.
That's right. Yes, I did notice that it was actually on streaming.
So that's one I'll be able to check out fairly soon, and I do appreciate it because this is sort of a category I enjoy. So I guess it's time for my number 4.
Mm-hmm.
So here's my number for you. Yeah, see what I did there? I totally, yeah, that was awful.
Sure. Yeah, I'm accepting it. Mm-hmm.
It's like dad jokes. I heard that if you make dad jokes, or as they put it, if you make a lot of puns, it's a sign of narcissism.
Oh my god, I'm in so much freaking trouble. Holy crap.
Hey, we're not talking about you.
See, I always thought puns were the sign of someone who just happens to love language. But yeah, okay, whatever.
Yes, language love is good, but not as good as ship love, right, Jen?
Hey, there's a line. Yep, that's absolutely right.
Okay.
But the question I think here is, obviously we love words. The big question is, are we using our words to the most effective, or in the most effective way possible? And I'm just going to throw this out here and say, it doesn't matter actually what anybody else thinks about what it is that you are saying if you use words that sort of form in a joke, because yeah, that's just you being expressive. That's not you being a narcissist. So I'm all for it. Lay on the dad jokes, Josh.
All right, but maybe another time, because right now we got to get to my number 3.
Oh, come on, I'm sure you can worm in a dad joke here.
We're number.
You're at number 4. You're
number
at
number
4.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. See, when I'm put on the spot,
see, it's for me. So, or for you, or whatever.
It's for everybody.
That's better.
So my number 4 is it's about not one, not even 2, but 3 movies that get made in this one movie. Gasp.
I think I know what this movie is.
That's right. It's a Muppet movie of some. No, it's not. It's not far off as far as certain things go, because I'm talking about 1994's Ed Wood.
See, I knew that was the movie because it's actually on my list as well.
What?
Yeah.
We cross over again.
Slightly higher on my list, but yep, that's the one.
At my number 4, it can only get slightly higher for you. So,
hey, 4 is a lot. There's a lot that can happen.
That's true. So I'll, as usual, keep this brief so I can, give you the floor when it's your turn, when it's time. Ed Wood is a movie about Ed Wood, and that it's pretty much as cut and dry as it gets. Oh, you might be asking, well, who's Ed Wood? Well, Ed Wood was he was a filmmaker, and he is known for making some of the most films of all time. You can put it in your own adjective because they'll all fit. It really depends on how much you appreciate cheese. I think that's really the key here, and it again fits my theme of getting your friends together, making movies. Except Ed Wood did it, and he's trying to be one of those guys that makes movies and gets lots of money, but he unfortunately never really made those types of movies. It was kind of a, I hate this term, but he kind of pulled himself up by the bootstraps and had an idea in his heart and did whatever, and like literally whatever he had to do to make his dreams of being a filmmaker a reality. And the end result is it happened. He made films that um, are still watched to this day by
Hmm.
new generation after generation, and they're always appreciated for exactly what they are. You can't really watch an Ed Wood film and say, "I'm watching it for the craftsmanship." It's you just
It's for the story.
you watch an Ed Wood movie with friends and have a good time. They're movies
And
that
copious amounts of vodka.
it's yeah, that definitely a thing that helps pat it heighten the entertainment value. But this his movies belong into the subcategory of like party movies, right? Not movies about parties, but movies that you watch during a party.
Absolutely.
And I would dare say he might even be the inventor of said genre. Whether anybody knew at the time it would be a thing or not, that's sort of in line with The Room, as far as it's a movie that you get your friends together and you watch it and laugh and have fun, um, and realize, well, the difference, of course, being between Ed Wood and Tommy Wiseau is Ed Wood. Uh, I don't think he had any misconceptions about what he was making, while Tommy Wiseau seemed to think he was making a good, like, great movie. Um, but yeah, Ed Wood is a wonderful film by Tim Burton starring Johnny Depp. It might even be the birth of the the really weird Johnny Depp um, phase, character phase of his career, where he really gets into I'm this person. And it would carry on into the Willy Wonkas and the Pirates, and he's no longer just you know brooding or just the pale guy with the dark hair. He becomes uh, more more of a character in the movies after this. So Ed Wood is this number of mine, and I love it.
I will have a lot to say about Ed Wood in just after we have one more sleep. No, actually, just one skip of our list, and I have lots to talk about with Ed Wood and Tim Burton's sort of peaking genius that happened right there. But I'm gonna talk about that after I talk about my number four movie, which is a movie that yeah, this one's a little bit controversial simply because most people will call it trash, and I don't call it trash. I actually really like this movie for a number of different reasons, which I will entertain you with. It's called Grave Encounters. Okay, so this group of paranormal, and I think it's found footage, so beware, but they are trying to make a movie of what they find in this abandoned psychiatric hospital. Now, the way that they go about it is ham fisted, and there's a lot of crazy stuff that's going on. But there is also the added element of obviously videotape, also, or maybe not videotape, but some kind of recording of the things that were happening in the hospital prior to the hospital being closed down, and possibly even before that. Like psychic imprinting. It's actually a really sort of easy to pick apart story without a lot of interconnecting story parts, and yet Grave Encounters does something that almost zero other found footage movies can really lay a claim to, and that is it's an interesting story. It is an interesting idea behind the scenes about what happened to this abandoned psychiatric hospital and the entire plethora of bad stuff that was going on. And then how that affects the people who are in the hospital trying to shoot this massive amount of footage to assemble into this special. Um, One thing that I also, and I don't have any other found footage material on my list for a good reason, because most found footage stuff is like, it's not really people trying to shoot a movie or shoot a documentary or anything like that. It's people having cameras accessible and, you know, being able to be in that moment with their camera, and then all of a sudden mayhem explodes and they just find something. Kind of like Cloverfield or something like that. Those people weren't actually trying to shoot a movie, so I didn't include any of those. But Grave Encounters is different. They really went there with the intent of documenting everything. So they're shooting the documentary of this place. The other thing that Grave Encounters does that no other movie for me really kind of comes close to doing where it's found footage is it's actually kind of scary. And I'm not saying that it's like, you're not gonna sleep with the lights on tonight or something like that, but it's scary enough that it's like it is deeply psychologically traumatizing. There's a lot of scenes in there that just feel like they pull on some kind of primal imagery, which really end up being pretty frightening. And a lot of it has to do with the way that the movie is shot. It's shot from multiple different perspectives, and it's shot from multiple different angles because lots of different people have cameras, and then there are sort of the static shots, which are like the baseline camera pieces. And so because of that, it's all jumbled up. You don't really know what's happening in reality and what's happening maybe in like a spirit realm, or and then how do things tie in, like why are things merging so much. It's really fascinating, and at the time when this came out, I feel like it was a much smarter approach to found footage movies that didn't drag you on a ridiculous, oh, hey, I just have a camera and happen to just hit record whenever the really scary stuff happens or whatever. It really attempts to kind of show you w- what the difficulties are here in capturing stuff that's even a little bit scary, and then well, was this really scary? Did this really happen or did it not happen? I mean, by the time the movie is in its act 3, you obviously know that there is something really malevolent going on, but up until then, there's a lot of really random things with people just sort of disappearing and footage being murky and unable, you can't really see what actually is going on, and then when you do see what's going on, it is absolutely frightening. So, Grave Encounters gets my number 4. I won't tell you everything that's going on because, again, this is a horror movie, and the shtick is in sort of the uncovering that big story underneath it. And it's not, the found footage here is not as bad as a lot of other shaky cams, so it's like probably not going to make you totally seasick because there are some static moments as well. But do beware that it is, there's a lot of hand holding of the camera. So if you don't like that stuff, yeah, you probably won't like Grave Encounters. So that's my number 4 movie about a movie being made about the making of a movie.
Excellent. Okay. So far, though, we've only hit 2 movies that I have not either seen or heard of. So I think I'm doing pretty good tonight.
Was Grave Encounters one of them?
It was.
Yeah, I didn't think you would have watched Grave Encounters. There is actually a Grave Encounters 2, by the way, which is not, it's maybe a slightly better, like, developed story, but it's not as scary. Grave Encounters is actually the scary one.
Yeah, I ran into Grave Encounters too when I was adding Grave Encounters to your list, which you can find on Letterboxd at 1021pod. That's right. Official Letterboxd for this podcast, 1021pod. Follow it, and you'll be able to check out all of our lists as I get them updated. And just a cheap little plug. Cheap little plug. So my number 3 is appropriately placed because it is a 3. Some people might say, we knew this movie was going to be on your list, Josh, but you thought it might be a little higher up. Well, no, in this particular category, it is number 3. It is Clerks 3. Yes, Dante and Randall are back, directed by Kevin Smith. It's basically the story of the guys from Clerks making Clerks. Yeah, there's all sorts of meta commentary in here as Randall has a massive heart attack and kind of gets inspired by Dante as he said, you've watched all these movies over the years. I thought you would have made one eventually. And, Randall's like, well, I'm going to make a movie. Yeah, that's pretty much how he says it too. But it's the story of Randall making, like I said, he's making the first Clerks movie now, after all these years, kind of getting that day in the life of him and Dante. And I kind of wish I knew how that conversation went, where they're like, how they picked what day it would be, where they're like, hey, remember the day that you had to put that shoe polish sign up and then we knocked over the casket and we played hockey on the roof. Remember that day? Let's make a movie about that day, that particular day. And it's, as far as trilogies go, it's one of my favorites because it does take place over a long period of time between like 1994 and 2022. That's a whole lot of years to only check in a couple of times, but we sort of see where these guys go from, we work at a convenience store. Oh no, that burned down, so now we work at a fast food place. Oh no, we hate that, so now we own the convenience store, and that becomes, you know what, we have to document this journey. So they do, and they do what Kevin Smith did way back when, and fill it with, friends and customers and all sorts of just people that are around to make this movie within the movie. It has a lot of emotional beats that you really wouldn't expect from Kevin Smith. Not because he's bad at emotion, but because it's Dante and Randall. They've never really been super deep about their friendship. They're just a couple of guys that rag on each other. So to have them open up in this movie while they're making the movie over, the idea of they're going to make something that lasts forever, even though they won't. Facing a little bit of mortality as the impetus for creating an eternal record, even though technically movies aren't eternal. Neither here nor there. Not gonna get sidetracked by my own words. But you can see not only the story, but the emotions that Kevin Smith himself must have been going through after his Widowmaker heart attack, and uh, basically defying the odds to survive it and create a better, healthier life for himself afterwards. Yeah, John, a living testimony, enduring testimony. Great ways to put it. Clerks 3 is not to fit the theme of most of the other movies on my list. It's not the idea of Hollywood getting together making a movie, but once again more of the idea of, if you want to create art, if you want to make a movie, then just do it. It doesn't have to be the greatest thing in the world. It just has to be done if that's what you have inside you. Clerks 3, I think, is the best representation of that, because it was done by a guy that had that inside of him. And that's
Okay.
exactly why I had Clerks 3 crack my top 3 as my number 3.
Very cool. I have said just about all that I could possibly say about Clerks in the numerous other lists that I think Clerks has been included on. So always a good choice. Always a good choice.
Thank you.
Okay. My number 3 is the aforementioned Ed Wood. Now, I want to give you a little context. Although Josh did a pretty good job of, talking about Ed Wood being, kind of an out there um, director, actor, screenwriter. But I'm going to go a little bit further. I'm going to say that, look, a lot of Ed Wood's filmography is filled with just straight up pornographic stuff. And then some of his stuff deals with, as an example, uh, well, he calls it transvestism. I think that that's not correct anymore, but he treats it very interestingly by talking about the world's first sex change operation. And, there's a lot of really interesting pieces behind, I think, his fascination with sex and human sexuality. So it's not just that it's like one aspect of sexuality, it's the entire genre, if you will, of human sexuality that interests him. And he made so many movies that deal with um, people that are in, I guess, just really odd situations and either fall in love or something happens to them. Uh, Sorry, I thought I was going to sneeze. Uh,
Oh no, we lost Jen. I guess the lists are all mine now. The only number ones that matter are the ones that I bring. Oh, hey, Jen.
hey, I'm so sorry. I sneezed myself off the podcast. Um, so the other thing about Ed Wood that is, I think, important in understanding Tim Burton's sort of quasi biopic about Ed Wood starring Johnny Depp is that he was also, in a weird way, overly fascinated with the process of making movies that really didn't, I think, pitch women in a super awesome light. Which is not to say that, anything, well, I don't know. I haven't seen everything that he's done. I don't know if it's like overtly misogynistic as much as it is overtly over sexualization. And sometimes it can be really, really weird. And I'll give you an example. On Cinema du Fromage, we highlighted a movie called Plan 9 from Outer Space. Plan 9 from Outer Space is probably Ed Wood's most famous movie, and it is highly sexual. The things that happen, even though they don't really require sex to be involved, are incredibly just everything feels overly sexual. Even I mean, even imagery that doesn't need to be feels like it. And that's the kind of thing that he did. So that's just sort of the introduction to what Ed Wood or who Ed Wood was. Now, the movie that is Ed Wood. Um, okay, so this is the 1994 movie, and like Josh said, it stars Johnny Depp. Now, the interesting thing I think about this is that Tim Burton really chose his subject matter and his shooting very specifically. He chose to shoot this in more black and white than not. He has an extremely intimate understanding of the subject matter, and I feel like he passes that on to Johnny Depp, who really kind of portrays Ed Wood as um conflicted on a number of different scores. I feel like, yes, of course, this, definitely was kind of the beginning of, this romantic involvement. And I don't mean that like, they were actually romantically involved. I mean, Tim Burton and Johnny Depp clearly have a love story of their own to be told in their filmographies together. I mean, they obviously really respect and care about each other, or did. Um, but this is kind of the first movie that I can remember seeing with Johnny Depp as a character that was so outside of any other character that I had seen Johnny Depp play before, and also really introduced me to the brilliance of Tim Burton. I mean, there are shots in this movie that are downright just brilliant. Um, and they sort of all convey a world that is maybe not falling apart, but not as neatly cohesive as perhaps the average brain would perceive them. And it's really, really excellently done. The production values in this are wonderful. Um, and even the shout outs to the movies that Ed Wood made are done so well because, they're incorporated in the overall movie about Ed Wood in a way that sort of gives you a chance to also revel in what it was that he was putting forth. Because if you only know him from Plan 9 from Outer Space, you're missing out on a lot. And I don't mean that in like a great way. I mean like you just don't know a lot of Ed Wood stuff. Um, I think in some ways there are a lot of pieces in here that are controversial, which we don't always get to talk about. And when you turn a biopic into something that, feels a lot more fantastical than not, you get to talk about things that you wouldn't normally bring up. And I do give him a lot of credit for that. The other thing that I did really like about this is I loved Vincent, and I always pronounce his name wrong. Uh who's Vincent from Law and Order? Vincent
D'Onofrio.
D'Onofrio, thank you. I don't know why I can never think about his last name. But he played Orson Welles in this movie, and it was really good. Like, that's such a standout performance to me. I really, really, really loved it. Bill Murray um, was also in here. I mean, it was actually just Sarah Jessica Parker. It was a good cast of characters that came together to put it to, and you can tell that that kind of everybody knows and is familiar with Ed Wood's um, with his body of work, if you will. I really think that this movie deserves a lot more credit than it gets for being as good as it is. Put aside whatever you think about um, who Ed Wood was, and the movie itself stands on its own. It is really, 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 really good. Everybody gives super standout performances. Even Martin Landau, who plays Bela Lugosi, is just amazing. I mean, everybody has kind of like the niche role in this movie that just make them perfect. So, like Josh said, Ed Wood is just a really great movie. And 1994 with Tim Burton just could not get better. So there you go.
Sorry, I was checking up on the chat.
I don't think, John, that he was. I don't know. I can't say for sure because I don't have a really good feeling for his actual biography. But I know he was fascinated with the entire I know he was fascinated by, I'm just going to say he was fascinated by human sexuality in all of its glorious forms. That is, everything from what makes you a sexual creature to what is actual intimacy, and are there, kind of crossovers between, doesn't matter if you're a woman or a man, or or is there something else that's there? And I feel like that's what really propelled Ed Wood to explore all the things that he did in his movies. But I feel like it was Tim Burton that captured a well-formed understanding of the Ed Wood experience in a way that I don't think if you just watched a bunch of Ed Wood movies that you would understand. Like there's a lot more to the man than just what you see on film, which I mean, of course, I guess is true for everybody, but yeah, I think there's a lot of misunderstandings about who Ed Wood really was and what he was trying to do, which I don't think was just straight out to make porn. That isn't what that's what it kind of comes off as, but that isn't what I think he was trying to do. And I don't know if he was a I mean, cross dressing is not, I don't know. I don't know. I just know that he definitely was mired in all of the different functions and facets of human sexuality, and it really shows in everything that he tried to do artistically. So there you go.
Well, John, I hope that answers your question.
I'm sorry if it didn't. I feel like I need an encyclopedia of Ed Wood in order to be able to understand him better. But I did love the movie. The movie was great.
It's a fun movie. I watched it for the first time this year, and
Oh, really?
yeah, and it's just one of those that it had gotten by me for a very long time. But when I saw it, it made an impression.
Yeah, that's an oldie. And also the way that Tim Burton shot it makes it feel even older than it actually is. You know,
Mm-hmm.
because it feels like it has that kind of old matte feel to it almost. Like, it's not, I mean, obviously it's not video, so that sort of helps, but there's clearly something that was going on in either the film process or the film wash process that kind of gives it that old feeling to it, which is really interesting. It was a really interesting choice. I mean, some of the scenes there feel noir, um, just heavy, excellent use of shadows. So I don't know. I'm very impressed by it.
Well, we are down to my number two,
Number two.
and I'll honestly be surprised if this isn't on your list. And here we are in the top two. So
Mm-hmm.
I imagine that if you added it to your list, it would definitely be up here. But my number two is this little film from 1952. As I've already stated, I have an affinity for the golden age of cinema. And this is one of those. A movie about making a movie back in the day. It's called Singing in the Rain.
See, That didn't make my list.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I know you enjoy musicals.
I do, but I I have a hard time with this movie being a movie. I mean, in spirit, yes, it's a movie about making movies,
Hmm.
but it didn't feel like it hit the technical note that I wanted it to.
Okay. Oh, that I thought I thought you were gonna.
No, no, I'm not going to explain anymore. I'm just going to say nope, it just didn't make my list, and yep, you can leave it up to your imagination why.
I'm guessing you hate Gene Kelly.
Yeah, and I'm also allergic to rain, so that's yeah. I have a hate relationship with it. What can I
I
say?
hate rain.
I do
You
love the
want me to
music
talk
though.
about singing in it?
I do love the musical though, and I absolutely 100% have this as a Spotify list. So
Well, rather than going into the usual, this was the plot. They're making a movie. That's the plot. There's some sort of Get Shorty esque skeeziness going on behind the scenes, but not in a mobster way. Uh, no, no, not in a mobster way. As we see, sometimes people are just kind of, a little rotten, even in the magical world of movies, and will often do what they have to do to secure their place, especially if you're. I mean, let's face it, a lot of the actors back in the day were kind of interchangeable, and when the studio could do it, they sometimes would, whether it's to save money or save a picture. They would um, do what they needed to do to get their picture out there, including have someone else sing for other people. I'm not gonna name any real life examples, but Julie Andrews got a lot of work. Thanks. Yeah, there we go. That's what I was. Yeah. That one
yep.
landed. Yes. Okay. So, um, I honestly, uh, I as much as I enjoy a movie about a movie, what I enjoy about this most is it's the singing and the dancing. Gene Kelly doing his thing. Um, that's what I enjoyed. It was a combination of these great elements, and I don't mean rain. That's not an element that fit into the equation. But it's a musical. I love musicals, and to be able to add a musical to this list because you don't really see people sing songs about making movies, um, or make musicals about making movies. Really, it kind of has an almost solitary place in the sun or under the clouds, however you want to put it, and it makes it very unique, in my opinion, as far as the way they played this this movie out. I will conclude with I enjoy this movie very much, and it is my number two.
All right. um, Gene Kelly is one of a kind. I mean, there's no ifs, ands, or buts there. Any movie with Gene Kelly in it has some merit simply because Gene Kelly is in it. So definitely a good choice. My number two is uh, you know, sometimes we forget how much the world has changed just in terms of having instant access to the things that we need and a way to communicate those things to people in a split second. And so it used to be a lot easier to sort of like go undercover, be incognito. Yes, Jesus Christ Superstar was about making a play, but it was also a movie about making a movie because they definitely had cameras in there. So they were clearly shooting at least the Jesus Christ Superstar from the 1980s, 70s, I think, which also has great music in it, by the way. Okay, but back to my number two movie. Um, this this particular film that I'm going to unveil here um, was filmed in 1941, and it has gone through kind of a odd resurgence in, hey, this was actually a much more polished movie than we all thought it was. And some of that has to do, I think, with TCM kind of giving it a little bit of, the kiss of approval. um, and some of it is film historians watching it again or watching it for the first time and saying, this was actually pretty good. But at the time that this movie was out, I don't think it got super critical awesome reviews. So there's that. The movie is called Sullivan's Travels. And Sullivan's Travels is, I'll give you kind of just the breakdown. He's a young Hollywood director. His name is John. And he makes these extremely profitable, but very, I guess shallow is a good word, comedies. And he's really unhappy. He feels like he does not have the right depth and wants to do something more important. And this is sort of, one of the conversation that we had earlier about how method actors work. This is kind of the reverse situation where, the director doesn't feel like they have the range to do the things that they want to do. So he goes off and says, "Okay, I'm going to dress up like, basically a tramp, and I'm going to hit the road." And his staff have to follow him in a bus because that's the only way the studio will let him go. And they start filming the stuff that's happening to him. He meets this really struggling actress who's like ready to give up, and she's like, "Yeah, no, this isn't going to work for me." And I don't know if I want to say he falls in love with her as much as I think he really feels empathetically for her. I think romance does kind of come into it, but he is extremely enamored by her kindness, because she pays for his meal, not knowing that he obviously has a lot of money. Like, her compassion really touches him. And then he goes on to, oh boy. Um, he kind of goes on to experience a bunch of things from the perspective of being poor and unable to make um make his way in the world. And he sees a completely different side of the world, and it's super interesting the way that he sees it. But this is where, us living in the age that we live in, we don't have any problems kind of finding each other or figuring out where each other, unless you're Carol Baskin's husband. It's kind of hard to fall off the face of the earth. But somehow in this movie, um Sullivan falls off the face of the earth, basically, and there's a an idea that he's been murdered, and there's a series of events that lead up to that, and he can't convince anybody that he is actually John Sullivan, because nobody believes that this, poor downtrodden guy could possibly be that person. So he confesses to what everyone now is calling the murder of John Sullivan. And he gets photographed, and then the photograph gets out, and then people recognize him and they go, "Oh, hey, that's John Sullivan." And there's kind of a happier ending. It is a very interesting film about making a film, and how, once again, the depths and the levels that people will go to create inspired art. that somehow they have to find themselves in all of this mess, disconnect from who you are and become someone different in order to experience the world with a totally different lens, be able to see things in a way that you never saw them before, and that sometimes that is extremely fraught, and almost like an overarching metaphor for losing yourself and then having to find yourself again. And on the other side of finding yourself again, you discover that you didn't really like the person that you were before. There's a lot of profound kind of little meta contextual things going on in this movie, but awesome. The awesome part, I think, of it is that it really showcases this idea that just because you are successful in Hollywood doesn't mean that you are fulfilled or potentially are happy or have any, because all of those things come from a different place. They don't come from the success of your work necessarily. They come from a wellspring that you have to discover for yourself. And I really liked it. This movie was actually a really, really good movie. It's very high drama, but it's also really kind of like poignant and intimate in the way that it is shot. So much of the movie is just sort of him in different frames, and not, I mean, there are plenty of other people in the movies, and or in the movie or movies, considering that the film crew is walking around following him, but um a lot of the movie is sort of like him in sort of his own retrospective space. And so you see him in still frames a lot, just sort of him, the background, whatever it is that are the props around him. And it's super cool. It's actually a really good movie. So it got really high marks from me. And that's why it is my number two. Again, 1941, so it is black and white. The dialogue in this is crazy good. And I honestly think you'll like it. It was, I think that this movie is actually a Paramount movie now. I don't know, but I can tell you that this particular movie was recently picked up by the Library of Congress as a National Film Registry movie. So it will definitely be preserved in archives for as long as the Library of Congress is keeping archives, which is really great. I actually am really happy with that. So that's my number two.
Excellent. Excellent. Which means you only have one left, which means I only have one left.
That's
Oh my
right. I wonder
goodness.
if it's a crossover. Is it a
Uh,
crossover?
maybe.
Does it involve J.J. Abrams?
Who?
J.J. Abrams?
Never heard of her.
Oh, okay. Who's on first? No, wait. What's on second? Okay, never mind. Never mind.
You say these words and make me wonder. Where are you going with this?
Oh, you don't know? Oh, do I have a surprise in store? That's cool. That's actually really cool.
Especially at this point in the game. But the game is afoot. No, the game is a list.
I kind of wonder if you've ever seen my number one movie. I feel like maybe this might be a movie that you haven't seen.
Quite possibly. But yes, John. And now, without further ado, my number one, directed by Ben Stiller.
Okay, well, that's definitely not my movie, so all right.
It is Tropic Thunder.
Oh, good lord. I totally forgot about that movie.
I did not.
Apparently. Apparently.
So what happens when you get some of the actors, I was going to say best actors, but realized no, it's not supposed to be a film filled with great actors, except for Robert Downey Jr.'s 5-time Academy Award winning character Kirk Lazarus. No, because Ben Stiller plays a sort of not quite aging out of action star, but definitely an action star that's kind of gone the distance, so to speak. The film opens with these fake movie trailers. Tug Speedman has Scorcher 6 Global Meltdown coming out, right? Jack Black, a drug addict, actor with just a lot of personal issues, is trying to get back on the good graces of Hollywood by taking part in this war film. His fake trailer at the beginning is called The Fatties Fart 2, and Robert Downey Jr.'s Kirk Lazarus has a fake trailer about two gay monks in the 12th century called Satan's Alley, which, by the way, I'd probably watch all of these movies, to be perfectly honest. But what happens is they're cast in this film, this war film, about this Vietnam veteran's experiences in Vietnam. And as they find out, the director doesn't have a clue how to kind of keep his stars on track. So they wind up going way over budget, irritating the producer, which, by the way, Tom Cruise, would you believe there was a time when Tom Cruise actually had to have make some sort of a comeback? And this was it. This was the role that people were like, okay, maybe Tom Cruise is done jumping on couches and talking about how much he loves Katie Holmes. And maybe he is done being, weird. Not really, but it did sort of pave the way for, the next era of Tom Cruise movies by getting him, I guess, back in the good graces of, people. But with this movie within a movie being over budget and out of time, the director decides to start hiding cameras in the jungle, give them a map, and say, go. We're going to shoot this film, and, we're going to be very method about it. Unfortunately, things happen, and they find themselves in the middle of the Golden Triangle, a big heroin trading route. And as they think a lot of it's just, hey, it's movie magic. We're not in any real danger. So yes, when you have comedic geniuses like Ben Stiller, Jack Black, and I'll even say it, Robert Downey Jr., because he is just an amazing actor, and that includes comedy. It's an amazing thing to watch them play off of each other, with appearances by Matthew McConaughey as the agent, Tug Speedman's agent, who just wants to get his boy a TiVo. He's like, just get him his TiVo. That was in his contract, and he doesn't have his TiVo. He needs his TiVo. Anyway, and it's a lot of action set pieces, a lot of fun banter, and quite frankly, it's also a movie that's, for some people, caused a bit of a stir with the casting of Robert Downey Jr. as Kirk Lazarus. Not really, I say it all the time, context is everything. And the idea that some people think, oh, Robert Downey Jr., he should be, kicked out of Hollywood because this is blackface, right? It's like, no, he's not. The whole thing is a parody. It is no, it's satire against, not necessarily against, but it's a satire of all of those actors that take going method maybe just a little bit too far, and that's what his character does. Kirk Lazarus, his character is a white Australian dude, and he takes it too far in preparation for his role and gets the skin pigmentation, tattoos, and it's a whole thing. But it's the joke, that's the whole joke, front and back. Got to make fun of those super method actors that feel like I'm James Woods and I have to work at a convenience store for 30 days because that's my next role, which, by the way, was a gag on The Simpsons.
On The Simpsons, that's right. Ooh, piece of candy. Piece of candy.
So, Tropic Thunder is, I think, an excellent piece of satire that not only gives us an enjoyable action comedy, but it really roasts the hell out of the industry itself by shining a light on some of its not so glamorous aspects and then pointing and laughing like a kid that just got pantsed in middle school. I absolutely enjoy the crap out of this film. I love it. And I'm not really sure anybody else could have really pulled it off. They pulled in the right people. Ben Stiller got the exact right people to do the exact things they need and delivered a movie that, quite frankly, I think will always sort of stand the test of time. To sort of, at the very least, be a snapshot of a certain period of time in the industry. Tropic Thunder is my number one all day when it comes to movies about making movies, and quite frankly, it didn't even make your list, and that blows my mind.
It didn't, and I will tell you why if you want to hear why. If you don't want to hear why, then I won't say it. But
okay, go ahead. Tell me why. Tell me why.
It didn't make my list because I actually find this movie to be grating. It grates on my nerves a lot, and I know what they're trying to do, and I applaud the. I love dark comedies. I love deep, sardonic, sarcastic material. I'm there for a lot of it, right? For some reason this movie hits me in all the wrong places. It makes me feel like oh boy. I don't like to make this comparison because I know it's not exactly the same, but bear with me, right? For the same reason that I really hated Django Unchained, that's the same reason that I don't like this movie either. Because like I get it that you're trying to parody something and make it, like larger than life because you're kind of making fun of it. But simply by making fun of it in the way that they kind of put this thing together, it made me feel incredibly uncomfortable. And rather than watching a comedy that I feel like, yeah, okay, and they could have. I do feel like there are places in this movie where they've done some really good stuff, definitely really good stuff. Um, but overall, the movie feels to me like they are trying too hard to say, haha, look at me, haha, haha. I guess in some ways, it kind of feels a little bit like, and I've said this on my podcast before, part of the reason that I haven't enjoyed everything that Seth MacFarlane has done is because that very same feeling. Like, if you have to call so much attention to your humor that you have like you it becomes this over dramatized and blow up thing, like it's larger than life, it makes, I think, the audience feel diminished in some ways. Like, oh, you guys, are you guys just too dumb to get this? Here, let me make it even more clear than it actually is. And so again, I'm not saying that like they didn't start out with good intentions, at least in terms of the storytelling, but the execution of the story feels really ham-fisted, like they're just beating us over the head with it. And again, I guess you could say that, well, maybe that was the intent, but it doesn't feel comfortable to me. And that's just my own personal take, because honestly, a lot of people really do love this movie. And I sort of have to just sit back and go, okay, well, that's a thing. It's not like there's anything in the movie that is like, oh my gosh, I feel like you could make a federal case out of it, or, but it just makes me feel incredibly squicked. Like, yeah, no, this is not how I want to spend an hour and a half in the evening watching a movie. I just can't do it. But again, context is everything. I choose movies on my list that I know probably few sane people would sit and watch. So I'm not, in sitting in judgment. I'm just saying that, like, that's why it didn't make this list. It is a good movie about making movies. It just isn't the movie that I would have chosen for my number one, or even I didn't make it on my list. If we had been doing the top 20, it probably would have been on that list. So there you go. Do you want to know what my number one is?
I'm a little scared now.
You won't be. Okay. I have this whole lead up and intro into this movie. Long before Stranger Things, J.J. Abrams made a movie about a group of kids who were growing up at the end of the 1970s. In fact, the movie takes place in 1979. And this particular group of kids decide that they're going through a lot. One of the kids is going through a grief process because his mom died. And so things are incredibly emotionally heightened for him. And then there's all the regular kid drama that's kind of going on, crushes and trying to figure things out, just kind of being kid stuff, belonging. I mean, there's everything. So they decide to make a movie. And the movie, which we will find out later the title of the movie, but the methodology that they are using to make this movie is actually how I first started making any movies at all when I was a kid, using a Super 8 camera. And so the name of the movie is Super 8. This movie is so cool. It's not the kind of movie that's like, oh, did you see Super 8 by J.J. Abrams? Uh, it's groundbreaking and people are going to talk about it forever. And I feel in some ways like Super 8 was sort of the lead up, like the incremental step that he was looking for Cloverfield, because Cloverfield is a lot more chaotic, but it's a monster movie, and so is Super 8. Um, Basically, the kids, as they're filming their movie, they go out to the railroad tracks, and it just so happens that at the time that they're filming, there is a massive rail derailment, right? The cars derail, and something comes out of the rail cars. Now we don't see that originally, and the kids don't even know that they've got it shot on film until later. But crazy things begin to happen in this little tiny town, including dogs go missing, and then people start going missing, and then lights and electronic things start to kind of only work sporadically or on and off. And then there are all of these amazing reveals where we actually discover that the military is in on this, and that the creature has actually been around for quite some time. That the Air Force captured it when it crash landed, and they are holding on to its spacecraft. Um, but the alien is trying to find a way to get basically off the planet, and it builds these psychic connections. It builds a psychic connection with one of the with a bunch of different people. But then, eventually some other really crazy things begin to happen. There are these other sort of creature, I don't know, extensions, I guess, that happen. And it's some of it's really scary. The stuff that's supposed to be underground is actually quite scary. In the end, he does actually make his movie with the Super 8 camera, and it's called The Case. And as he is asking for the short film to be picked for a local film festival, he's attacked by one of the other kids who has basically succumbed to the I want to call it like an infection. It's kind of like the alien establishes this bond, and it turns people into, for lack of a better word, zombies. It's super interesting. It's got a lot of cross genre material in it. The thing that I love about this is, first of all, the kids, the kid, and but all of them together too, are so dedicated to each other, that they're willing to make this film with their friend who's clearly trying to resolve his grief over the loss of his mom. That's number one. Number two, there is something so nostalgic about realizing that they're shooting this film on Super 8 when Super 8 is, for a lot of people who are now, Gen X and older, that's the way that you learned how to manipulate movie material. It's really easy to edit, a little bit of editing tape and a projector, and you can edit all of your stuff. Um, and yet it's like complicated in the sense that it's not video capturing software. So it did take a little bit of effort and skill. Um, it's such a great film that, to me, this is the kind of movie, when you're making a movie, that you want to show. You want to show, why are you making the movie? What is it? And then I think this movie gets points for me, a better score overall, because the metaphor of making the movie is basically, this is how he's handling his grief. His grief is is the movie. That is sort of what it all is. It's the frustration. It's every stage of grief goes into making this movie. Um, and I love that. I just absolutely love it. And then add the cast of characters on top of it. The government sort of cover up, the twist and turn of everything, kind of being underground under the town, and how they try to evacuate the town by setting these wildfires and stuff. It's actually kind of cool. I like the way that they did that. But then, the ingenuity of kids, I absolutely love as a trope altogether. There is something about that inspired innocence that is definitely a great method for telling a story. So Super 8, J.J. Abrams, he wrote it and directed it. Um, and it's definitely one of those films that, like, if you haven't seen it, it is worth watching. It's not what you normally expect from J.J. Abrams. It's not like, this super high tech and fast sort of action movie. It's definitely a bit slower, and it really takes its time to uncover the subject matter. It takes time for you to get to know who the characters are, so that you understand, when the monster actually gets a hold of them, what that means. What is important about that? How does that actually play in? It's just really a good movie. So number one for me about movies, making a movie, is Super 8 by J.J. Abrams.
Well, I will say, when it comes to Super 8, it has in it a very clear and present love letter to Steven Spielberg in it.
Yes, yes, yes. I completely agree with that. I love, one thing that I really loved about Super 8, which is different from a lot of other movies that sort of deal with maybe the same basic subject matter, because if you'll notice, my number 9 was Son of Rambo, which kind of deals with a really similar topic, even though there's no monsters. But Super 8 does this thing where it sort of turns some of the idyllic tropes that we love to tell about kids upside down. And it's not like the kids end up being the heroes of the story. It's that the kids are the vehicle by which all the protagonists get to experience the world. And I kind of like that. It's not necessarily like the monster is a MacGuffin, but it's kind of close. We get some villainy people, like, some bad guys, sort of, but not really. I mean, everybody is just basically trying to do their job. There's a lot of moral ambiguity in this that sets it, I think, apart from other movies that try to do the same thing, where it's very clear that there's a good side and a bad side. And this way, it kind of doesn't pit the kids necessarily against everybody. It just makes the landscape so much more difficult for them to navigate. And I felt like he really got it somehow with this movie. So there you go. That's my number one.
Well, I look at the old clock there and I see what time it is, and I think it's time to quickly run down what we talked about here tonight as far as our favorite movies about making movies. And then, Jen, you're going to give us our homework assignment for next week.
I am. I absolutely am.
Let me guess. It's our top 10 favorite romantic comedies in honor of Valentine's Day.
If they were romantic comedies and you were making a list, you'd be doing that one alone. So you can go through your top 10 romantic comedies, but I would rather eat nails. Thanks.
Well, joke's on you. I make all of my lists alone.
All right, then. Fine. Okay.
Well,
do you want me to go first or you go first?
You know what? I'll go first, and then you can segue right into the homework assignment.
All right.
All right. My number 10, Be Kind, Rewind. Number 9, Hail Caesar. Number 8, Dolomite Is My Name. Number 7, Get Shorty. Number 6, Mank. Number 5, The Disaster Artist. Number 4, Ed Wood. Number 3, Clerks 3. Number 2, Singing in the Rain. And number 1, Tropic Thunder. What was your list, Jen?
My list starts like this. Number 10, Wes Craven's New Nightmare. Number 9, Son of Rambo. Number 8, Barton Fink. Number 7, Shadow of the Vampire. Number 6, Hail Caesar. Number 5, Living in Oblivion. Number 4, Grave Encounters. Number 3, Ed Wood. Number 2, Sullivan's Travels. And number 1, Super 8. And you're sort of right. This week's coming assignment is it's about Valentine's Day. Well, let's just say that it's about romance, because it's not specifically about Valentine's Day. But I had this idea that we should make a list of the movies that incorporate how we would like to be romanced. So each movie should contain some aspect of the way that you want to be romanced. What do you find a good courtship practice? And that's why I say that probably there won't be very many horror movies in here because, my idea of a hot first date definitely has nothing to do with body horror. Yeah, maybe it's second or third date, but definitely not the first date. So I can't wait to see and get an idea of how Josh wants to be wooed by his potential partners. Let's see what it is.
Different woo?
A different kind of woo, but yeah, that also works. So let's see what it's going to be. I'm excited. And just so that everybody knows, I'm just going to give a quick shout out to my other podcast, which is TV Dinners on Tuesday nights. This coming week, I am going to be talking about a couple of different things. We always do the news in entertainment first, And then I am going to take a slightly different kind of detour and talk about different the different genres that are right now available to us on different streaming platforms, because this has become a whole sort of cottage industry all by itself. And I really love this idea that, you can find all kinds of different aesthetic choices on category pieces inside of HBO Max, inside of Netflix, inside of Paramount. There's all these really cool ideas for finding just the right niche of TV show that you will like. So we're going to talk a little bit about some of those and maybe inspire some people to give us their ideas of what type of genre they would like to see added. So join us for that. And then on Thursday, tomorrow, oh my gosh, I'm so excited. So join us for an announcement over at Wadco Media for our placement of the Last of Us podcast. And in this week's episode, we're going to handle episode 1 and episode 2. And then we're going to move on to episode 3 sometime shortly after that. It is going to be awesome. We have so much planned for this podcast. Lots of good story elements, things that you might have missed, lots of little behind the scenes stuff. And I'm sure there will be a ton of talk about Pedro Pascal. So join us for The Last of Us. If you've played the game, you'll love it. If you haven't played the game, you'll still love it. We are equal opportunity podcasters here and welcome all audience members. So join us on Thursday for that, same time. How about you, Josh?
Well, if you want to catch up with everything I'm doing, just go to wadcomedia.com and you're going to find all the wonderful links and appropriate places to click that little mouse to go click, 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 click. And make sure you leave the likes, whether it is, Facebook, YouTube, or Twitch. Make sure you subscribe so you know when we always go live over here at Wadco Media. And join us Friday night. Brandon is not going to be available for the podcast. Oh, sad. But good news. We have a very special friend joining us all the way from England. Although I still need to get that confirmed. Reconfirmed, I should say. Just to make sure everybody's on the same page. But yes, special guest co-host. Hopefully, I will have that particular announcement ready to go on the Wadco Media Facebook page very soon, as well as the Wadcast Facebook page. So make sure you're liking all that stuff if you like the sound of my voice. Yes. So that's... Oh, and if you like what we do, there's a Patreon page. Sure, you can, go over there, throw down a couple ducats. But honestly, between you and me, I'd much rather you go to the merchandise store and buy some of our cool designs, whether it's on a t-shirt or on a coffee mug or on a cool sweatshirt that I wear every day when it's chilly. Anyway, who doesn't love the extra pocket space? Honestly, I do. So I'd rather you get something for your hard-earned money. So it's less like, please, sir, can I have some money to do this stuff? And
please don't make us revert to the Ed Wood form of movie making. I mean, look, nobody really wants that to happen. So I feel like buying merchandise is actually a much kinder and more gentle way of us making money. Silence.
Ed Wood way of making money.
Okay. Well, maybe that was a bridge too far. I don't know. But I mean, if it comes right down to it and we are really that struggling, I will what could I do? I don't even know what I could do. I could read an erotic novel for your Patreon. There we go. That's what I could do. But that's about as Ed Wood as I could possibly get. So that's
I'll
it.
start an OnlyFans.
Yeah, right. I'm sure we will just get thousands of people that want to hear me. Yeah, okay.
Again, it's not about you, Jen.
See, I'm obviously me. I love puns. I must be a narcissist. Okay, I'll accept it. I'll move on and just accept it. It's all good. It's all good.
Although I do like to joke because Brandon does have an OnlyFans, and he hasn't posted anything. But I said if you want to see Brandon's OnlyFans, because his name is Brandon Junk,
That's epic.
I'm like, just look for Brandon's Junk.
Oh my god, that is so epic. Okay.
Love it, love it.
Whew.
So I guess that's gonna do it for here for us tonight.
It is. I thank you so much, Josh. This was really fun. Have a great night. I can't wait to see what your romantic inclinations are for next week. This will be exciting.
Oh, I can't wait to see it either because
you know it's going to be dark and sinister.
and then it's probably going to be more like a lighthearted comedy where people get
We'll see.
where people fall down a lot.
We'll see. We'll see. You'll have to tune in and find out.
Yes, tune in and find out next week. Same list time, same list channel. I'm going to throw that up there. I can't wait either, John.
All right.
So thank you for joining us here tonight. Thank you for downloading the show, if that's the way you're taking this in. And thank you just for being awesome. So with that being said, that's going to do it for us. So say goodnight, Jen.
Good night, Jen.